Well, I certainly hope all of our friends out there in the Boss Hole Transformation Nation are having a wonderful start to 2024. A brand new year, a brand new season of the Boss Hole Chronicles, and it's so good to have you with us. This week, we're actually going to be starting a 5-part series on the big 5 skills of emotional intelligence. Many of you already know that my wonderful friend and amazing business partner, Sara, who is expert in so many different things, is actually a certified consultant in the field of emotional intelligence. And over the years, I have come to learn so much from her about this practice area, and I thought it would be really beneficial for her to share with the audience what are the big 5. And I've heard that term. She's used that term before. And the big 5 represents what some would consider to be the 5 most critical skills of emotional intelligence. Now, there are many different skills of emotional intelligence, but we want to dedicate the next few weeks to talking about these 5. And Sara is going to be walking us through this. So this is a great series, wonderful for any managers that are currently managers or people that are thinking about getting into management. This is an essential skill set that you need. Let's jump in. Boss Hole Chronicles are brought to you by Real Good Ventures, a talent optimization firm helping organizations diagnose their most critical people and execution issues with world-class analytics. Make sure to check out all the resources in the show notes and be sure to follow us and share your feedback. Enjoy today's episode. Hi, Sara. How's it going?
Hey, John. It's going real good. Happy 2024.
I know. It's amazing. I can't believe it's here already, and we're off to such a fast start. It's pretty cool. And I'm thrilled that we can be back in the studio together talking about cool boss hole prevention stuff. And this is really going to kick off a very special series. And I'm so glad that our audience is going to get to hear from our very own expert on emotional intelligence at Real Good Ventures, Sara. But Sara, I've heard you talk about the big 5 skills of emotional intelligence, and I thought this would make a great series. And this is going to be the first part of that series. But can you tell us just a little bit more about what are the big 5 and where are we going to start?
I'm happy to do that, John. And if I just step back a little bit further, I would offer that, the concepts that we're going to talk about in our short series here are things certainly I've been passionate and trying to master for the last 23 years, because I was certified in emotional intelligence in the year 2000. And what I saw that was so valuable about EQ is that, number one, we all have it. We all have emotional intelligence. We naturally develop these capacities as we mature and grow. And we can, at any point in time, determine which skills and abilities would assist us most in our current chapter. So I love the fact that it's they're almost like dials. We all have the dials. You need to know which ones to turn when, and maybe you need to get a little more conversant with one or two of the dials. They're kind of foreign to you,
right?
But we have them. So I like to just offer this word of encouragement. It's not like we're talking about anything new under the sun. And I want to just assure our listeners, you have these capacities. You just need to more effectively amplify them and intentionally utilize them.
I was going to say, and know when to deploy them, or know when to turn up those dials, or turn the dials up, or turn the dials down. And while we're going to be talking about the big 5, there are actually far more skills for emotional intelligence. How many are there actually?
Well, in the model that we use at Real Good Ventures, John, which is the Emotional Quotient Inventory, or EQI, there are 15 competencies in emotional intelligence. And I actually was certified in the use of this model and this assessment. It was the first reliable and valid emotional intelligence assessment in the book of Measure. So I think that's noteworthy. We've been talking about EQ since 95, for sure. Daniel Goleman's book put emotional intelligence on the map, and other great contributors built upon his model, tweaked and developed their own. This particular model, originally designed by an Israeli psychologist born in America and collaborated with, is owned by MHS, or Multi Health Strategies. There are 15 competencies, and we've determined through our work and our research that these 5 if we're going to have to talk about EQ, or we'd like to talk about it, these are the 5 that would really help us get some traction in creating more fulfillment, more success, more stability in our work life and even in our personal life.
All right. Cool. Cool. So what are the big 5? And we're gonna do one at a time. We have a 5-part series. So what are the big 5 and which one are we going to start with?
The big 5, John. Are you ready?
I'm ready.
Starting in reverse order.
Okay.
Number 5 in significance, impulse control.
Okay.
Number 4, assertiveness. Number 3, self-regard.
Okay.
Number 2, most important of the big 5, empathy.
All right.
And number 1, and this shouldn't surprise our listeners because we talk about how self-awareness is the cornerstone of leadership development and strong leadership. It's emotional self-awareness. That's number 1.
Okay. And that's where we're going to start, right?
Yeah.
All right. So take us through it, Sarah.
Okay.
Emotional self-awareness. And by the way, just so everybody knows, just because we measure everything at Real Good Ventures, it is possible to measure these, and get objective data around them. So emotional self-awareness, take it away.
Yeah. Emotional self-awareness is, in fact, your ability, John, to understand what you feel and why you feel that way all the time.
Okay.
So simply said, it's the capacity to identify the depth and breadth of emotions you are experiencing and to even take it a step further to understand why you feel that way.
All
so
right.
knowing there's emotion at play all the time. We think and feel almost simultaneously. So we have a feeling oftentimes as a result of a thought. Those processes, as they play out in our brain, produce emotion and consequential behavior. So just understanding that emotion and what's behind it can be game changing. That's why it's the cornerstone. We all have varying degrees of emotional self-awareness.
Okay.
Interestingly, I've always perceived myself to be someone who's highly emotionally self-aware. And assessments have indicated as such. And of course, they're self-assessments. So it's my perception of me. But when you're high in emotional self-awareness, it means you do know how you feel, but it can become a bit of a challenge for us or a liability in that we could be over guided by the emotion. So there's also an element here in self-awareness that allows us to work toward managing the emotion, not being driven by it. So I would say, let's think about each of these big 5 in terms of if you have a lot of it, if you're right down the middle in your confidence or ability in that skill, or if you have a low amount.
Okay.
So I think if you have a lot of it, you would be able to often say, gosh, this is the feeling that I have. And you know what? I was thinking about this when preparing for our chat today. The feeling word vocabulary. I share different variations of something like this with all my clients because oftentimes we don't have a strong vocabulary for emotional words. In many of our experiences, emotions are taboo. We've been trained that they're not to be expressed or identified in the workplace, for example, but we're having them and we need to move beyond just mad, sad, angry, and glad.
Okay.
Like as an example, I'm happy. Okay, I get that. How about hopeful as a distinguished element of happy? I feel loved. I feel satisfied. I feel grateful or thankful. Those all fall in the category of a positive emotion we call happy.
Okay.
Mad. I have a little experience with this one. Are you mad? Are you impatient? Are you frustrated? Are you defensive? Are you feeling offended or jaded? Are you feeling scorned? I mean, there's just so much more underneath these very commonplace notions. I'll do one more. Scared. So afraid. Yeah, I feel afraid. I feel lost. I feel uncertain or hesitant. So the idea here is that the stronger our vocabulary, the more we know and can describe what we feel, then we can manage those uniquely.
Well, and you talk about it's a feeling vocabulary, correct?
Yeah.
Okay. So just broadening that and just really understanding, because there's so many nuances to each one of those, just really understanding what that is. And if I may, this happened just the other day. You and I have talked about this before, but I was driving and something was really bothering me. And it was one of those things where, you just feel a little off. And I wasn't pissed, but I was angered by something, but I couldn't name it.
Yes.
I literally had to pull over and just go back through just the last few hours, of the day to figure out what really activated that. And I was able to figure it out and was like, oh, okay, now I don't even, is that sort of in the realm of
Yeah.
emotional self-awareness? I mean, I knew it was affecting me, but I really needed to stop to go back and figure out what was the thing that activated that.
100%.
Okay.
And first of all, your willingness to do that indicates that you have emotional intelligence, that you knew driving your car that if you didn't stop and get to the bottom of the origin of
Yeah.
that frustration or that yuck you were feeling, that it would probably disrupt your effectiveness
For
for the
sure.
day
Yeah.
and your well-being. So I love that. And so if I may ask, I was going to ask, was it my fault? Did I do something?
No.
It was that comment I made about your graphic, wasn't it?
No,
I'm
no,
kidding.
no, not at all. No, that's funny. No, it was, and actually it was something kind of innocuous.
Yeah.
It just kind of, it threw me off, and I just needed to go back and sort of resolve it just in my mind. It wasn't a
Yes.
big thing, but I think what you just said is really profound. It absolutely clouded the way I was looking at that present moment in my day, wherever I was
Mhm.
going, and the conversations that were coming up. And I needed to clear that out. I needed to get rid of that clutter.
Let's just agree that your willingness to do that created a management of that emotion. And my
Hmm.
guess is, John, that as you processed it, you changed your thought about what happened.
Oh, for sure. Yep. Yep.
And the good news is we all kind of do this the same way. Something happens, we tell ourselves something about it, and we have a feeling and an emotion in response.
Hmm.
Generally, they're negative thoughts that create very negative emotions. And if we can just appreciate that they're deeply, ingrained grooves in our brain because we've been conditioned and we spend a lot of time thinking that way. Our brains are wired for negativity. But
Right.
emotional self-awareness and being willing to explore the depth and breadth of, what you could be feeling, let's give it a name. Let's give it a specific name.
Okay.
Get that clarity gives you an opportunity then to use other tools and methodologies. For example, we always talk about it's basically cognitive behavioral therapy, but what it is challenging your beliefs. Is that really true? What happened? And what you heard that person say?
Hmm.
Is it really, really true? Is there something else that could be going on? And that exercise of changing or adjusting the way you think about it is, in fact, the access to well-being and peace and serenity and letting go or processing through negative emotion.
Right.
So that's good. If I have mid-range ability with emotional self-awareness, I think it just simply means that I'm hit or miss. Like there are maybe some areas of emotion that I'm really comfortable digging deeper, and they're not uncomfortable for me. The mid-range person, John, just simply doesn't do this consistently. Maybe they
Okay.
have some success. Maybe they have a good resource around them, a colleague or a trusted partner or a family member, a loved one who can challenge their thoughts and beliefs to the
Right.
point where they begin to do it themselves quite naturally. And I would say if you have low emotional self-awareness, and we've certainly coached a lot of executives over the years,
Hmm.
this is common the higher you go in an organization. When we find people that perform very effectively, they get results, they move quickly,
Hmm.
they've won that position and that influence because they're more focused on the task
Sure.
than how they do the task, for example. That's a whole nother conversation. But for those individuals, I found it was very common that they would have low emotional self-awareness. And, when discussion happened, it would be common to hear, well, I really don't, that's not important. It doesn't matter how I feel. It
Right.
matters that we get this job done, or it matters
Right.
that I make this happen. But the reality is, and this is the whole reason we have our podcast, it does
Hmm.
matter. Because if you feel a certain way, everybody knows it. Why do
Yes.
they know it? Because it's in your voice tone, it's in your body language, it's on your face. So you may be saying one thing, but what you're communicating to others is 100% different.
Yeah. No, I think of some of the meetings we've been in with some clients, some executives, and you could just look at this person's face. It's like, oh, he's in a bad or she's in a bad place right now, and this will not move forward. Actually, Sarah, I've seen you do this, and I think it's masterful. Where it's like, hold on, everybody, we are not on the same page. Or this individual, where are you right now? Because
Mhm.
this does not seem to be sitting well with you, because we can't move forward if we can't sort of resolve this. And that takes guts. And I've seen all kinds of responses, but that's
Yeah.
that's a really critical element around team dynamics. And you're right. I guess, I mean, could we say that, people that drift into the boss hole zone, it's not unusual that maybe they suffer from very low emotional self-awareness. It's not that it can't be there, they just haven't accessed it yet.
Yeah, I would definitely agree with that. The cost of low emotional self-awareness at that level of leadership could be that it's a kind of a straight shot to the boss hole zone if in fact you are unaware of or do not reverence the emotions that you're feeling,
Yeah.
because they're going to happen. I mean, we're human beings. We will get frustrated, ticked off, annoyed, agitated, afraid, scared, but without the attention to that emotion.
Mm-hmm.
And in a lot of cases, we might stuff it down or walk right past it, or think we're walking right past it. It will emerge. That energy and those emotions will emerge in some way. And generally, it's not positive.
Yeah.
It could be a blow up. Somebody, I lost it. Well, sure you did, because you haven't said what you needed to say for the past 8 meetings. I'm not sure if that's a really good example, but
no, I think it's a great example. And I know
yeah.
one of the things that you always say, and this will be woven into this series, is say what you mean what you say, but don't say it mean.
Well, that's assertiveness. That's on our list.
So, Sarah, if for somebody listening right now that is questioning whether or not they have a strong degree of emotional self-awareness, a high,
Mm-hmm.
moderate, or low amount of emotional self-awareness, what could somebody do to figure that out? Or what are some tools that are
Sure.
available to them?
Well, in simple form, I'd say get a feeling vocabulary list. John, let's make sure we put one in the show notes.
Okay.
I don't subscribe to any one particular style. If you Googled feeling word vocabulary, you'd pull up, gosh, thousands of hits. So
Okay.
we'll put one in the show notes, but
Okay.
use that as a guide. Simple examples. So if you're in a meeting, and we all are in meetings, let's say you have a weekly tactical meeting, or it's your leadership team meeting, or it's a meeting that you don't enjoy going to, at
Mhm.
least 3 times during that meeting, stop and write down how you feel. So when an exchange is happening, when people are dialoguing or people are asking you questions, at least 3 times during that meeting, stop, look at your feeling word list, and find the word that describes how you feel in that moment. Later on, you
Awesome.
can go back and do the why. So what was happening, and why did I feel that way? And we'll get into this maybe, John, in another session, but once you establish the why, then you got to challenge the why.
Right.
What are
Right.
the thoughts I had? So that's what
Okay.
I would say right out of the chute.
Okay.
And recognizing our ability to tap into positive emotions. Negative emotions are pretty overpowering, and they can be all consuming. They can be long lasting if they're
Mhm.
not managed. And I'm not saying don't feel the feelings, but sometimes a quick hack to move away from very negative, or what you and I like to call below the line thinking and
Mhm.
acting and emotion, like guilt and fear and shame, that kind of stuff, it's all below the line,
Right.
would be to choose something you're grateful for. So focus on gratitude and appreciation.
Mhm.
And that is a direct access to your physical body responds in kind. So when there's negative emotion, it's fight or flight and adrenaline and all the things that happen under stress response. And when it's gratitude and appreciation and peace and joy, that's when the dopamine and the things we need come naturally and work to balance out that stress response.
Makes total sense. And I know you said we talk about above the line and below the line. Just
Yeah.
even that perspective on things. Am I above the line or below the line, and what that
Yeah.
represents? I think that could be a helpful tool as well.
Well, and as you say that, John, it reminds me that we need to say as we wrap up here, emotions are okay. They're good.
Yeah.
They're omnipresent. They're there. If we don't acknowledge them, they have much more power over us, and
Mhm.
they're not bad. So for everybody who learned when you were a kid that it's not okay, you want to feel bad? I'll give you something to feel bad about. Like, suck it up, buttercup.
Right.
It's really okay to feel emotion, and emotion is data. It's powerful information that if we disregard it, will come back to haunt us
Mhm.
in a not so good way.
Yeah. Yeah. And that's pretty consistent, Sarah, with the theme that we've heard over the last couple of years of moving away from that command and control and trust and autonomy. Within command and control and sort of that philosophy,
Yeah.
I sort of envision that suppressing, you push those emotions down and you show up and you work hard, and it doesn't matter what you feel. It does matter. And I think that's a lot of freedom right there to be able to say, if I'm in a leadership role, absolutely, I'm going to own these emotions. I'm going to have my feeling word list. I love that.
Over the holidays, my family took some time to binge Suits on Netflix.
Oh, yeah.
And, sorry if that offends anyone in the listening audience. It's actually quite an entertaining show.
It's entertaining. It's a good show. Yeah.
Yeah. The character in the show, we could probably have a conversation about each of the characters, but Louis Litt, the attorney, who has really no consistent application of any of these skills and abilities we're going to talk about. What he doesn't do is acknowledge in the moment what's really driving his behavior.
Mm-hmm.
And in some cases, it's jealousy, uncertainty. He's doubting himself or fearful that someone else is doubting him.
Right.
And these are normal things, not to the scale that they happen on that show, but, or maybe they are, but that's the kind of stuff that if you're a leader, you have to really tune into what's behind the scenes all the time for you. It goes back a long way, and it doesn't make it bad, but it's going to influence and skew your perspective on what choices you make next. So it's nothing more than important information. And the more you attend to it, the more comfortable you become attending to it, and the easier it is for your brain to switch gears from a negative emotion to a positive emotion.
Right. Oh, that's great. That is great. Okay. Well, I think we're off to a good start with number 1 of the big 5, skills of emotional intelligence. Sarah, thanks so much for this. And everybody, check the show notes and be sure to tune in next week when we will talk about empathy, which was number 2, right? Yeah.
That's right. Yep.
All right. Thanks, Sarah.
You bet, John. See you next time.
We'd like to thank our guest today on the Boss Hole Chronicles. And if you have a Boss Hole Chronicles story of your own, please email us at mystory@thebossholechronicles.com. Once again, mystory@thebossholechronicles.com. We'll see you again soon.